You on?
Yep.
Well, thank everybody for coming. This is a Taxpayers for Transparency group, and we are privileged to have some guest speakers here. Lisa Panette, Tracy Shore, most affectionately known as the Shield Maidens of Missouri.
I like that.
And these gals work hard at it. They go into the lion's den and bark at the lions most of the time. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the meeting over to either one of you.
Thank you so much.
Have at it. We will have a question and answer. Any question you want. If you don't want to stand up and talk about it, we'll pass that little thing around and you can write it down and we'll read it out loud and they can answer the question for you.
And if you do have a question, if you say it loud enough, because we are live streaming. So you
It
can
will
watch
be
this
live
again
streaming
later.
on our Facebook page, Taxpayers for Transparency, and it will also be on our new YouTube channel, which is by the same name.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank
It's all
you.
yours.
Thank you. Anyone have a question? You want to start? You want to start? Oh. Well, let's introduce ourselves. So my name is Stacy Shore. I am a real estate agent of 30 years from Lake of the Ozarks. Shield Maidens of Missouri, it became a calling for me. I was the original Missouri Mom Against Common Core, and we traveled to 150 cities in Missouri on our own time, our own dime, to educate people about what Common Core really was over 12 years ago. I had 3 children that were my whole entire world. As a born-again Christian, it was really important to me that the thing I saw in that fight was that math, it was truly math. That your kids came home and they would say, no, Mom, don't try to, 3rd grader, don't try to teach me, there's a new way. My teacher says you don't know how to do it. But something in my spirit said, it was like a God thing, and God's like, pay attention. And so what that meant in paying attention was when the school with math, that's an absolute, right? Like our faith is an absolute, my faith is an absolute. But when a teacher can say, don't let your parents help you to an 8-year-old do math, because we have a new and better way to do it, I felt like that was a real moment for me, that if they can tell my children that there's a better way to do math, don't let your parents, it's old fashioned, then it can really breach my faith and come into my home and impact my children's lives and the reach I had to them. So that's when I leaned in and I got involved as a grassroots activist. I'm on my Republican Central Committee, I'm the vice chair. I'm also on the Board of Equalization in my county. We passed the first data center ordinance in all of Missouri, and I can say I was really privileged to be a part of writing that. And it was a very aggressive thing. We just revised, actually passed a 37-page revision to our planning and zoning last week. So very active in my community. I drug my children to every school board, planning and zoning, city council. Like, they didn't know that wasn't normal. My daughter, no, they didn't. My daughter was like, doesn't everybody do this? My daughter's name is Sophia Shore, and she is running 6 Senate races right now. Bill Eigle's county executive race. My daughter was the chairperson of the convention, the Republican convention in the state of Missouri. 1,000 delegates showed up, and they voted my daughter as a 26-year-old female. She actually got voted in by the delegates in Missouri to be the chairwoman of the Republican convention. So you're going to hear that we're really liberal because we don't agree with Amendment 5. That's just simply not true. Lisa, I'm gonna let her tell you about her, but she doesn't always do a very good job because she's very humble. I need to be talking about her, but I'm gonna let her. But I will say this: Common Core was my thing. The heartbeat bill was hers, and I hope you tell this audience about that because that's a really big deal. But we've been friends for a long time, and it's just such an important thing. And I say, my motto, my credence is like, the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Just set it free and it will defend itself. It gives me goosebumps, that saying. But that's why we're here. We love our state, we love our country, we make no money. In doing this, we just feel called, and it's actually kind of fun. So it's fun to teach people who want to learn and understand. There's something very gratifying about that. So that's why we're here tonight. So I'm going to at least introduce herself. We're just so grateful that you all have come just to hear. If you have questions, we try to be interactive as possible. So if you have a question when we're on a slide or you want some clarification, ask us. Ask us, because it's okay to ask questions. We want questions. So go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'm a lover of Jesus, and that's why I'm here. Jesus brought me into this. I don't even quite understand it some days. When you say yes to Jesus, you don't know where that's going to be. I was doing different outreach over in East St. Louis, and then I ended up in this place called Anacostia outside of Washington, D.C., because that was the only government thing that I knew. Somebody was going, and I knew that the Lord was calling me to government. And I'm like, I know how to pray in these slum areas for revival, so can I go? And from that, the Lord really just opened up all these doors, and I don't know, I've been doing things ever since, and just every time He opens a door, I happen to go through it, and it's quite, I guess it's that simple.
Yeah.
Yes, I brought the heartbeat bill to Missouri. It was an honor to watch God do what only God could do, because I had the party tell me, we will never pass that because we need this issue to keep Republicans Republicans. Because if we get rid of that issue, then we have to look to other issues, and they didn't want to have to do that. I will say that Missouri Right to Life fought me every step of the way against heartbeat. And then after that bill passed, they took a photo op with the governor. So that was like a big...
We still have the handout that they gave the day that we were working to pass the heartbeat bill that told basically representatives not to vote for it. So it was just this real eye-opening experience for me that lobbyists actually squat an issue, if that makes sense. It's their issue, and we're just the normies. And so they want to be able to navigate that issue. I mean, and I learned that the hard way with that.
Yeah.
So,
And so now I'm with Armor Vine as a lobbyist for freedom and liberty for the people of Missouri. It's an honor. There really isn't anything like it in the state of Missouri, so when I go and testify, it's always pretty much like a corporate special interest. I say we all have special interests. Mine happens to be Jesus, for example. And liberty and freedom. And I homeschooled 3 girls. So, I mean, we have a lot of passions, and I go in every day and I fight on behalf of the people in the Capitol. And that's through Armor Vine, and that has been a real privilege to do, although some days I come home and want to cry or scream, and she gets the other side of it.
I don't go to the Capitol. She does that every single day. If they actually filibuster until 4 a.m. in the morning, she stays. That is something I could not do. So I am, that's just a very hard thing. So the Shield Maidens are just, we have a website, and then we have a podcast once a week during session, where basically you're listening to like 2 best friends just break down what just happened. And so we're terrible at technology, as you can see, and we do our best. And so it is like listening. My son's like, your sound is terrible on the podcast. So I was like, I don't know what to tell you. You know, we do the best we can. So we're just honored to be here. We're going to get into the Amendment 5. So Amendment 5 is something that's being touted as the elimination, and you're going to hear this term, phase out of the Missouri state income tax, right? We are 100% against the income tax. We want it gone. Let us be clear about that right now. But what you're going to start to see are patterns. So we're going to break this down so real people, like you've seen the ballot language, we'll go over that in a second, but just we want you to understand the patterns and the cadence of really the deception that's going on, trying to get this across the line. So this is a video. Our sound isn't good, so I'm going to try. This is former speaker Tim Jones. And we'll have all this on Shield Maidens so you guys can watch these videos and such. But basically they're telling you this is the best thing that's ever happened. You guys need to run to the ballot box. You need to vote on this because it's going to change your life not to have Missouri income tax. So we can't even believe we get to do this. So we have been called every ugly name. Democrat, communist, ragey liberal,
operatives.
Yeah, operatives.
Tax arrangement syndrome.
It's just so crazy.
CCP.
But it's like the whole Charlie Kirk thing, right? that when Charlie Kirk, and we all had such admiration, and I said when he died, I didn't realize how much my kids even looked to him. It's about the conversation, right? When you shut down the ability to have true dialogue, and Charlie Kirk always said there'll be a civil war. It feels an awful lot like that when you try to talk about the truth and let people make their own decisions. And so that's why we're here tonight. We'll skip this video. Oh wow, it's gonna go really fast. Trust. You want to talk about this one? Okay. This one we can't play it. It sounds not great, but I'm gonna see if I can just push play and let them watch what's happening.
So,
Sorry.
on,
Go ahead.
so this is a video in the gallery, the Senate gallery. We were voting on, well, not me, but our General Assembly was voting on if we could see what's going on by video in the Senate chamber.
And tell them why.
Because
We're one of only two.
Yeah.
We're one of only 2 states in the United States of America where our Senate does not video for the purpose of the public what's going on in the chamber during debates and what's going on in committee hearings. So why you would want to see that, just so you know, in the committee hearings. So you guys are from Owensville, you read a bill that they're trying to get through the committee. And so you have read it, you understand it, you're an expert, you want to go be a part of that committee. You go into that committee hearing, and by the time you get there, they've already substituted new language that isn't even applicable to what you just read online, to where you drove across Missouri so you could have be a part of the process. So you go to actually testify, now you tell people what they find in the committee hearing.
you find that they come in, maybe a handful of them, and they're gonna take attendance, and then they're gonna slowly start to leak out to where there's maybe only 2, and then what I saw all this year was only the chairman left. So they're really not listening to you, they're checking off the box, like we listened, this is what we did in committee. But there's not really an engagement process going on where they're truly
The
listening.
travesty of that is what used to happen, because we've been doing this for over a decade. The whole committee would be there. They would listen to the experts that were coming in from across the state, and they would take something away from them that they didn't have that knowledge. Now they don't care anything about you. The lobbyists rule the day in the Missouri legislature. So the Senate is only one of 2 in the United States of America that does not play the video of the chamber debates and the committee hearings. They do video though. This is your proof. So pick it up here, because you were there.
So what they're getting ready to do is say, we're going to do a standing division. What is a standing division? A standing division is when they say, if you're in support of this and you're a yes, then everybody stands in the room. And then they take the no's and everybody stands. There's not an official record of it. It doesn't go into the journal, the official record, and so you have to be there to see it for yourself because there is no record. This is another reason why they don't want you to be able to see video, because when they come here and they're like, oh, that's such a great guy, they share my values, right? But then they're doing these things behind your back that do not share your values, and they don't want you to see who they really are. And so with this, what's happening is she's really aggravated because she's like, I want everybody in this chamber. Like, we shouldn't have to go down alone. So make sure that everybody comes in the chamber. So what the video is it shows them calling everyone into the chamber to vote, either yes or no, again, just by standing, a visual
And
vote.
nothing is actually documented.
Yeah.
This is how they play right now in the Missouri Senate. So this is, so you guys are like, how do you get that video? This was actually acquired by a Sunshine Request. Act for Missouri, which is an incredible organization, they actually figured out, let's just start Sunshine Requesting some of this stuff. So they got this because we wanted to see who voted to keep the Senate from being videoed and shared with the public. We wanted to see, so everyone was super curious. What did we find?
So they start off with, well, you will see here on the video what happens, but when they go to take the vote, they actually purposely black it out. So they have the video themselves, but they're blocking it out so you and I cannot see how they vote.
So this is where they're asking us, and we're going to show you in just a second. They're all asking us to trust them on this Amendment 5. We'll show you that. But the point that we want to make in the offset, do you trust a Senate or a leadership that is so absolutely opposed to people having a seat at the table that if you get home from work late and you want to watch what happened because you have an interest in a bill, you can hear it, can't see it. Not ever. One of only 2 states. Issue number 1. Oh, this is a huge one. Again, they're saying, run, don't walk. We're going to make history in Missouri. I was in a meeting last night with Senator Curtis Trent. He got super defensive because he was talking about all of the reductions in the taxes, your income tax, that have been going on in recent years. The legislature in the state of Missouri has the power to lower your taxes, your income taxes, and completely take it away. They've been doing that since 2022. This was an article, and it just shows, we were actually in 2020, I think, we were at 6% state income tax. It's been lowered without a vote of the people. It's at 4.7 now. Anything you want to add to that? No. This is the bill. So what I would say to you, last night at a meeting, everyone got handed out. You guys need to look this up. This is the actual legislation. You're going to see ballot language. And you think, oh, it sounds great. Ballot language does not spell out what the license looks like that it's giving the legislature. That's what we're going to talk about. So you want to talk about this part? This is the very first part, Part 1, Section A.
So Sections 4D and 26, Article 10 of the Constitution of Missouri are repealed, and they're going to add 2 new sections adopted in lieu thereof to be known as Sections 4D and 26 to read as follows.
So what you really have to do, the reason you're having to vote, you have to vote to amend your Constitution. They cannot amend your Constitution in the state of Missouri without your consent. They can lower your taxes, they can even eliminate them. But what they cannot do is amend the Constitution in the state of Missouri without your vote. What they're really doing is they're amending this part, and this is an important part. So when you see Section 4D and 26, Article 10, what does it say?
So the income tax laws may incorporate federal laws by reference. Rates are set in this way. And enacted any law imposing a tax on or measured by income, the General Assembly may define income by reference to provisions of the laws of the United States as they may be or become effective at any time or from time to time, whether retrospective or prospective in their operation. The General Assembly shall, in any such law, set the rate or rates of such tax. The General Assembly may, in so defining income, make exceptions, additions, or modifications to any provisions of the laws of the United States so referred to, and for retrospective exceptions or modifications to those provisions which are retrospective. Meaning, with income tax, anything that they want to do and modify it in any way to reduce your taxes, they can. It's
And
right there in black and
At
white.
this point, this was adopted in November 5th of 1968, okay? So it gives the legislature authority. But there was something that happened then in 1980 called the Hancock Amendment. Does everybody know what the Hancock Amendment did? It's okay if you don't. The Hancock Amendment is probably one of the most prized, precious pieces of legislation Missouri has ever passed. And what it did is it said the legislature or your local county officials, they cannot vote your taxes to a certain point. They can't impose a tax on you without your consent. It's the consent of the governed. It was such a monumental thing, the Hancock Amendment. That was brought in 1980. We'll talk about that more in a second. But this is what gives the legislature the authority to completely take away your income tax. They don't need a vote of the people. They have the authority embedded in the Constitution. This is what we just said, right? Section 26. Section 26 is super important. In 2016, we voted on, do you want a tax on services in the state of Missouri? with an overwhelming margin, it passed. And people said, no, we do not want a tax on services in the state of Missouri. That amended your constitution to ban taxes on services in our state. This is embedded in our Missouri Constitution. With a yes vote, you know what you do? You lift that ban that protects you from having taxes on all services. That's what this is really asking you to do. That's what's embedded. So what this actually says,
Yeah, in order to prohibit an increase in the tax burden on the citizens of Missouri, state and local sales and use taxes or any similar transaction-based tax shall not be expanded to impose taxes on any service or transaction that was not subject to sales, use, or similar transaction-based tax on January 1st, 2015.
So what you're doing with a yes vote is you're repealing this protection, okay? They don't tell you that. They don't want you to know that. They want you to think, go vote yourself away, the income tax. You know what's funny about this? In no place does it force, like, give a hard date on when the income tax has to be phased out. It may never be phased out. So you're going to be paying. So let's talk about service, taxes on services. We're kind of good at bouncing things off. You start.
So services, what are those taxes? Medical, car repair, down to
If you build a deck
lawn
on your
care.
house, if you have your roof replaced, if you
Massage.
have plumbing, massage, haircuts, hair care.
Chiropractor.
Yeah.
Attorney.
Yes, attorneys, real estate commission.
Tax preparers.
Yeah. The list goes on and on, even medical procedures. But what it also does is it says, in this legislation, we'll show you, it's an expansion on the current tax on goods and then taxes on all services. So we'll go on. This is just a reference. Missouri voters passed an amendment to prohibit expanding sales tax on services. December 4th, 2016 was the article. Schools. This is a good one, and I want to talk about it. Go, you talk about it. 'Cause you're
Okay,
better.
so that first word that we don't have here is general. So it's the General Assembly expands the sales and use tax base pursuant to subsection 2 of this section, any political subdivision. Okay, so when they start to talk in those terms, what you think of, they're asking two things of you at once. They're asking about the state to be able to redo your tax code, but also your local entities as well. And so they'll both have the ability to increase taxation on you. Now what they're saying is, no, it's a swap, it's a swap. And we'll get into how it's not a swap, but just for now, that's what that means with political subdivision. It's actually talking about your local entities or political subdivisions there. That impose a sales or use tax shall, in the manner provided by law, enacted by the General Assembly. Okay, so again, I'm going to stop right there. In the manner provided by law, enacted by the General Assembly. So are your local entities, when we get down to the bottom of this, are they going to have the ability to choose? Under the terms by the General Assembly, they will ultimately be the ones, that's going to be important as we talk over a lot of topics.
And this is important because I kind of got these out of order. But the fact is, what they've given themselves in this legislation is 5 years to suspend the Hancock Amendment and write any rules they want, carve out any special interest they want, to apply whatever tax rate they want. We will be giving with a yes vote, and we'll show you that in a second, the General Assembly 5 years without your ability to see or vote on, because they're suspending the Hancock, or a portion of the Hancock Amendment that requires your consent by vote.
And I just want to say something
Go ahead.
there. So there's so much confusion because what they have you in is a word salad.
Yeah.
And the word salad is that, well, we're not actually suspending the Hancock Amendment. They are. For this legislation and to put together the new taxation policy, they are suspending it. So if that is in that legislation, but they can say to you, we're not really suspending it because it's just for this.
Yeah.
So technically, they could, if there's something else that comes along, yes, the Hancock Amendment would apply, but nothing else is going to because they're rewriting the tax policy. And so they're getting you all in this word salad because people don't know how to come back at them when they say things like that.
It's just like the whole thing is, they'll come in and they'll talk with all these like terms and vocabulary and act like they're the smartest people in the room. And when we look at each other, like, they're so dumb. Like, they're saying a lot of words, but they're not saying anything at all, right? Like, you guys are too beneath them to understand. Oh, no, you're not. Oh, no, you're not. You can read the legislation, and it takes a minute because you got to go to your Constitution, and you got to see what these references are. So it takes a little bit of study because they do that intentionally, but you are not too beneath them to understand. So anyway, talk about schools.
So it's negative that they make a one-time adjustment to one or more of the following rates of tax imposed by the political subdivision. Okay, so what this means is they're saying whatever, again, they being the General Assembly is going to say what the political subdivision cannot do. And they're saying we're going to make a one-time adjustment to one or more of the following rates of tax imposed by that political subdivision.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Have you guys heard that if you pass this, they're going to reduce the taxes on your real estate? Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah.
They
Okay.
say property.
Property.
It's always property, and there's two properties.
That's right.
Real estate or
Bingo,
personal.
100%. So what I think the most important thing, and I'm going to do a little sidebar, okay? I'm going to explain very quickly why your real estate taxes are out of control. So the Missouri State Tax Commission is an appointed board of 3 members. They serve at the pleasure of the governor. He appoints them, okay? What has happened, because we've talked to so many assessors across Missouri, they're super frustrated. But what the State Tax Commission has come in and done, they have said, either you sign on to this international set of assessing standards that we have adopted, and you agree by signing a memorandum of understanding on behalf of your county that you will submit to these international standards for assessment, which is AI, or we are going to withhold your county sales tax from you. It is political extortion. They could have last session fixed it. They could have put a boot on the neck of the State Tax Commission and in a separate piece of legislation, which they should have. They could have fixed it, but no. They want you to believe that if you vote this in, that they're going to reduce your real estate taxes. And that would be a lie. Because, oh, I'm sorry.
Because, and I think this is important, the governor had the tax commission put these assessors, like bring them into the Capitol so that they felt forced to sign these memorandums of understanding or they weren't going to receive their funds back, their tax funds. But because of that, they're going to say this is how they're reducing. Well, again, so reduce the amount of revenue generated thereby in an amount that is substantially equal to 97% of the additional revenue. So right there, if they say it's a swap, and even let's say that they're going to be honest brokers, which I'm going to tell you why I already know they're not being honest brokers all over the place. We're going to get there. But with 97%, they're already telling you right here, it's kind of like, well, what if it looks like we're generating this? Well, let's just assume we'll give them 97% back. So that's a 3% increase right there. Even if you actually were to swap, that means a 3% increase. But they're not just going to swap. And again, I'll tell you why a little bit later. But this, with this expansion, these are the tools in their toolbox that they can reduce. But I want to go down to the last paragraph here. It says, notwithstanding the provisions of subdivision 1 of this subsection, to the contrary, no political subdivision shall adjust its local tax rates in a manner that results in any reduction to funding to any public schools within or serving such political subdivision. Where do the majority of your local taxes go? Exactly, and they're saying you cannot touch it. And by the way, they're allowing them to increase in any manner that they want, these local entities. So if they drive all your school taxes up, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it, because this is going to be embedded in the Constitution. They can't touch it.
So the thing is that we're paying very close attention to the senior tax freeze, okay? The senior tax freeze is very precious because as people want to stay in their homes, they grow older and they've worked their whole life to pay for their homes. A senior tax freeze, I'll tell you this, in Jackson County, Missouri, they have been using artificial intelligence to assess the values of people's homes. Quadruple, we've heard numbers as high as 600% increases on commercial. People are being forced out of their homes due to taxes. And it's gut wrenching. 55,000 appeals, 55,000 in Jackson County to the Board of Equalization because they have no mechanism to fight. Artificial intelligence is ruling the day, and that's what your state tax commission, just so you know, side note, that's why your real estate taxes are out of control. It's political extortion, okay? Either they adopt, your local elected assessor adopts this memorandum of understanding, which is a contract, or we have the letters on Shield Maidens of Missouri, if you want to look at them, that basically tell each county how much in sales tax they're going to withhold. So we go to the senior tax freeze. Well, that was brought in legislatively, not constitutionally. You know what's happening? As these increases go up and there's these freezes, what's happening? The schools don't get that excess of the increase. So the question becomes and begs to be asked, when they say you can't reduce, right, the intake to the schools, well, what about when I'm 62? What about when the rollover every year if someone's eligible? It's an incredibly valid question that needs to be asked and nobody will answer it. Will your senior tax freezes go away?
And
based on this provision.
And the Democrats are under this.
Yeah.
So on the floor, the last weeks of session, we had Democrat back, Senator Democrat back, and he stood up and he was embedding in different bills, and I haven't gone through all the bills yet, but I feel pretty certain that one of those did pass with it in it, that he wanted all of those identified, all the funds for the senior tax freeze and for the public schools identified. It's because they're onto the same thing that we are, and so they're saying, if this passes, there's going to be no way that those two can be compatible with a senior tax freeze.
I also understand this, and we don't have time to get into education. Education's my thing. I'm the Missouri Mom Against Common Core. And what we're seeing now in the evolution of our school districts is the technology piece is educating our children more and more. It's very, very expensive. So you have Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, all vying for apps on your kids' one-to-one technology. So where we're moving into this whole day and age, we're losing teachers, the valuable institutional knowledge that teachers have in place of technology. So when you see this part about schools, just replace schools with the tech titans that have injected themselves into our schools with one-to-one technology, Chromebooks, you know, the iPads. So you're really paying your taxes, and that's what we're up against when it comes to your real estate taxes. The education lobby wants every penny. Because it's not for your local school, it's for your virtual education school that is replacing our valuable teachers in mass. So
wait
go
a
ahead.
minute, Stacey.
Yeah.
So when she says one-to-one, because I have a lot of people that truly don't understand this, when she's saying one-to-one, it means the student with the iPad that is replacing the teacher altogether.
Yeah.
They are only learning from their iPad. And so when she says these things, it's also important to understand, why does that become so valuable? Because of all the data. That child in front of there is giving them excessive amounts of data on the daily. And those are all monetized. So all of your children's thoughts, ideas, principles,
Why do we need
values.
data centers? Because they're building
That's why we need
dossiers, yeah. And with that, the dossiers on every single breathing person, what they're doing with these computers, and again, I get off on a sidetrack on this, and I can't, because I'll just talk too long about this, but when these kids are bringing home their iPads at night to do their homework, they're linking into the IP address of the home. And then what happens is that tech giant has captured every keystroke, every search, everything, and taking it back in this little computer. So again, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, but this one gets our dander up for many reasons, and so it's contradictory. We're gonna cut your real estate taxes with a guest vote, but you're gonna have to give the school all the money without cuts, yeah. So it's totally contradictory. Next issue. And I just cross this out because I just want to read this to you. For the purpose of reducing and eliminating the state individual income tax, if they say that one time in this bill, they say it 20. So it's like you keep reading it, it's like you're going to be lulled into this hypnotic, like, okay, we're going to reduce and eliminate. That's not what's going on here. You're lifting the constitutional protections that are existing right now for you. You want to take this one?
Yeah, and I just want to say in that part, with reducing and eliminating, what does that really mean? Because they know that you and I think in concrete absolutes. That's not how these things look. They define it themselves or they leave it open themselves. In this instance, what they're going to do, and she has a slide for it later, they're going to say that the General Assembly is basically the one that's going to get to decide that. So even if it's put before the courts is going to say, if I look at this, it's the General Assembly that gets to decide if that was reducing or eliminating the state income tax. And then it goes to I believe it's the state auditor, who is the one that is going to determine what those rates would be reduced to. So again, it's all in their hub, and we'll talk about.
But again, what I want you to see with the legislation, it says state and local sales and use tax may be expanded by legislation to impose taxes on transactions involving any goods and services. That is what this says. So for anybody, so when they talk about expanding the base, you know, creating revenue, creating growth, that is what it means. Okay? And what you're voting for with a yes is to lift the ban that right now protects you from that. So just, that's probably the first most important. Talk about it.
Okay, so in 2025, this is the amount of our general revenue that came in. So they like to compare us to a lot of states. What you need to know is 64% of our general revenue came from the income tax, our income taxes. State sales and use taxes, they were 23.5% of our general revenue. And then lastly, the corporate income tax was 4.8%. That's going to be very important because when we talk and compare about other states, this is a huge difference based upon other states. I'm going to take the state of Tennessee, for example. The state of Tennessee, when they phased out their income tax, that they say that we're alike, they only had 1% that was coming in for their income tax. 64%. So as we're talking about being broke in the state of Missouri, dead broke. So do you really think we're dead broke? And they keep saying we have to generate more, we've got to get in more, we've got to get in more. 64% come from our income tax. There is no way that they're going to get rid of that income tax.
I also want to say this. Income comes from people who work, right? What we are watching right now is artificial intelligence remove people from the workforce in mass. I saw real estate. I have a client. He's an expert. He's amazing. He's IT in Kansas City. It's wiping out hundreds, if not thousands. So what I believe is they know what's coming with AI. They're having to make the replacement because here's the deal. They can promote legislation to protect the human beings and stop allowing AI to be considered a human because you can't collect income tax off of artificial intelligence. So just kind of put that thought in your mind as well. With respect to the legislation enacted by the General Assembly means the legislation expressly states the General Assembly's finding that such legislation will directly lead to the reduction and elimination of the state individual income tax as provided in subdivision 2 of this subsection and will directly, pay attention to these words, or indirectly lead to the reduction of local tax rates as provided in subsection 3 of this section. What's indirectly?
So indirectly means whatever they want it to mean. Indirectly means absolutely anything. But also, right here, this is exactly what we're talking about. The legislation expressly states the General Assembly's finding that such legislation will do this. They are the ones that get to decide.
And they haven't even started writing it yet.
Yeah, the ones that, by the way, let's just take this session. They want you to trust them. They're like, this is so good for small business. All the small businesses are like, what are you talking about? This is bad for small business, right? But this same General Assembly This session, you know what they did with small businesses? They said, well, the business licenses right now, they can collect up to $1,000 for a business license in the state of Missouri. Your super majority of Republicans took that up to $5,000 for the first business and up to $1,000 each additional business license that were associated with that. But trust them, this is good for small business. They're not wanting to increase taxes. Your governor isn't coming in and driving up assessments or anything and strong-arming them, saying if you don't do this, you're not even going to get any of your tax money back with driving up all your assessments.
Yeah. So again, just to kind of give you an idea, it talks about at least substantially equal to. I'm going to skip through because this is 18E. This is your Hancock Amendment. So if you're taking notes and you want to look up 18E, this is when they talk about the Hancock Amendment. Okay. So what you're doing with the Missouri Constitution, this is what it says: voter approval required. Okay, this is what the Constitution says. For taxes or fees when exceptions, definitions, compliance, procedures, remedy. In addition, the revenue limit imposed by 18 in this article, the General Assembly in a fiscal year shall not increase taxes or fees without voter approval. I won't read the rest. You get the idea, and those of you who know what the Hancock has done for us. It has been the most substantial protection in the best law in the state of Missouri, and what they're doing, they want to revoke that. So notwithstanding any provision of the Constitution to the contrary, beginning 12 months from the effective date for legislation in which the General Assembly expands, they're telling you what they're going to do, expands the sales and use tax pursuant to subsection 2 of this section, any political subdivision that imposes a sales or use tax in the manner provided by law enacted by the General Assembly. So when you're reading the legislation, they passed it. Your General Assembly passed it, but we have to wait, like Nancy Pelosi did, to see if this passes. Then we're going to find out what's in it. Okay, this is what they have given themselves license to do.
But also, what's important here, I want you to focus on, is beginning 12 months from the effective date. They are writing in there the ability for a year for a heyday gone wild, which you are going to have income taxes and you are going to have an expansion of whatever they have set here. It says it. They're not even going to look to reduce anything for the 12 months. It's just a heyday, the state level and the local level.
Carve-outs. What's this? It's marijuana. So when we talk about carve-outs for people that need carve-outs, there's nothing in this legislation about people. You know what they did carve out? Notwithstanding any provision of the Constitution to the contrary, beginning 12 months of the effective date for legislation in which the General Assembly expands the sales and use tax base pursuant to subsection 2 of this section, each sales and use tax rate imposed directly by this Constitution, with the exception of the rate imposed under Article 14 of this Constitution, shall in the manner provided by laws to come, enacted by the General Assembly that's not even been elected yet, be adjusted in order to reduce the amount of tax in an amount substantially equal to the amount of tax produced by any sales and use tax base expansion authorized by this section. Article 14 of the Constitution is marijuana. Just so you understand.
And the reason why is there's a hefty amount in the Constitution about marijuana
37 pages.
that gives an amount above taxation that you would get on the normal taxation. That's one part of it. But the other part says they shall have no other taxes. So no taxation on services and those things. So as we're expanding on everyone else, marijuana would not have that expansion for the services.
There's a lot of lobby money from the marijuana.
So this is why Carl Bearden.
Yes.
Carl Bearden, if any of you are paying attention, was a former Speaker of the House, like years and years and years ago. State rep.
Something, I don't know.
He now lives in Florida and owns a part in a marijuana company.
In Missouri.
And he's also a lobbyist.
Nine
Yeah, his
dispensaries.
marijuana company is in, say it again.
9. 9 dispensaries.
9 dispensaries. So he is just obliterating people, I mean, he's a bully.
Yep.
But when you
I go
understand.
round and round with them
I know.
on Facebook.
But when you start to understand that people that are fighting have a monetary major, yeah. So, okay, we'll keep going. This is where you see it. Here is where it's at. Medical cannabis, Article 14 is your Constitution. This is one that nobody's talking about that Lisa has been teaching me, and we've been dissecting. So, see if you can track with all this. So, let's go ahead.
Okay, so it's gonna go through the expansion of the sales tax, but then I want you to look at this. So within what they're going to do, it shall not be considered new annual revenue for the purposes of section 18E.
That's
which was the
Hancock.
Hancock.
Okay.
Okay, so they're going around the Hancock of this article and shall be exempt from the provisions of Article 4, sections 30B, 30C, and 30D of this Constitution. What is that? That is dedicated funds for your highways. And so all your motor vehicle, all your fuel tax, all of that goes in there. Now, I want you to understand something that's important. 30A, which is not listed on here, is actually the gas tax. So they are not talking, they got them in the original. And then they got so much withdrawal that they removed the motor vehicle tax. So that increase is not listed in here. But what is these are all dedicated funds to highway and transportation. It's extremely important. The reason why is because this Constitution protects us also from toll roads. That's considered a double taxation. The courts have looked at it and they said either we have to vote in toll roads, which we have said no to, or this has to be removed from the Constitution. So they're setting it aside and they're not even having a conversation with you that this can open up toll roads. Can we prove that? Nobody can prove that because they're writing the legislation in the next 5 years.
So it
they're
says,
opening everything up.
so it says, shall not be considered new annual revenue, that's 18, for the purposes of section 18E, that's the Hancock, of this article, and shall be exempt from the provisions of Article 4, sections 30B, C, and D. So if you're just reading this without a computer, you don't have the ability to research, you don't know what those mean. I'm going to show you what those mean. Shall be exempt. 30B, allocation of motor vehicle fuel taxes. This section specifies how funds for motor vehicle fuel taxes are allocated for highway purposes. It ensures that a portion of these taxes designated for the construction, maintenance, and operations of highways. 30C shall be exempt. Grants the Highways and Transportation Commission the authority to plan, locate, establish public transportation facilities, acquire, construction, maintain, and control these facilities, develop and fund various transportation programs, including aviation, mass transportation, and intermodal connections. This section emphasizes the Commission's role in managing public transportation as part of the state transportation system. Shall be exempt. It prohibits the diversion of state revenues derived from highway users for non-highway purposes. They're lifting this, okay? Ensures that the funds allocated to the state road fund and the road bond fund are used strictly for highway-related projects. They're exempting this. They're lifting this. They're modifying your Constitution. They're rewriting your tax code with a lift on this. Are you tracking? I know it's complicated, but you're kind of tracking on what this legislation, like you guys were, and we're going to read the ballot language. But if you were to vote yes, you're voting yes on all of these things too. And that's what nobody's telling you. That's why we're here tonight.
And just to be clear, these portions there, what that does with those portions, the courts have ruled because of these portions that they cannot institute the toll roads. So when they say they're exempting this, it is allowing themselves a path to institute toll roads without your vote.
And toll roads, just by the nature of toll roads, are considered a tax when you use them. So,
Pay for 70, right?
I'm sorry?
It's all to pay for 70. We know this is, Amendment 5 is to pay for the shortfall, plus we know they didn't have the budget money to pay for 70, so we exclude certain things that nobody's going to notice.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing they tell you is, again, they look at Tennessee, they look at Texas, they look at Florida, they say, look, everything's going to be great, they don't have income tax. Again, we'd love to get rid of the income tax. That's not the discussion we're here to argue about. We don't want all these other taxes. Now, I wanna show you where we are compared to these other states that they're comparing us. So if you look at Nashville, Tennessee, which they're talking about Nashville doing so great, right? They have a 9.75 standard tax purchase there. So their sales tax, the state one, is at 7%, and that county is at 2.75, right? So you're giving this, in total, it's 9.75 for Nashville, Tennessee. Okay.
And keep in mind, again, they have the ability to expand your sales tax on goods and services, and there is no really talk or parameters on how the triggers are gonna be put in place to make sure you're not paying income tax.
And also keep in mind that that's lower than our.
That's
current
right.
Okay,
tax
that's where we're,
Oh,
that's where
sorry.
we're heading. Yeah, that's where we're heading. So that's
Oh, I'm sorry,
9.7.
I've got it, I went to the 12 road. Let's do, I'm sorry, I gotta slide out of order. I want her to go over and just touch on how much the toll roads really would cost.
Okay, so
This is
let's
pretty
talk
incredible.
about Florida and Texas. They have toll roads, and Tennessee, by the way, is looking at them now. So let's look at Florida here. That if you ask, like, what about the toll roads? There is no single annual cost for Florida toll roads because most toll roads are paid per use based on the distance traveled and the specific roads driven rather than a flat yearly subscription. However, residents can save money through an annual pass program for specific facilities or unlimited trip discounts for local bridges. So when you cross this, if you want this Car Sound Bridge, the annual pass is $533 per vehicle for that annual pass for that one bridge. How about the next one? The Pinellas. The Pinellas system, you can buy a yearly pass for $15. Okay, up to 5 passes per year. This Lee County Bridges, which is Cape Coral, Midpoint, Sanibel, residents can sign up for an unlimited trip discount program with annual rates ranging from $330 for only these 2 bridges to $400 for Sanibel or $730 for all 3 of the bridges. $730 per vehicle.
Per year.
Per
Yes.
year.
Yeah. So the whole thing about toll roads, again, why did they put those articles in this legislation? Why is nobody talking about that? What was the purpose? But in going back and doing a deep dive, we feel very confident it's opening the door to what they wanted for a long, long time. And that's toll roads. Okay?
Herzog have anything to do with that?
I was gonna say, I think it costs like $50 to cross Oklahoma.
Yeah. I don't really know. I mean, all of the big players that are endorsing it have some interest in it, but I would be remiss in answering that with an affirmative.
Skido's biggest donor.
Yeah. One of them for sure.
So if you look at Texas, here's what they say. Daily commuters, regular users of managed lanes or toll roads in Texas may spend over $300 per month, totaling more than $3,600 annually, depending on their specific routes and time of day. The casual drivers, right, can use them at an average of $1.50 per toll, with the ramp cost ranging from 90 cents to $1.50. North Texas rates, here you go, you've got 21 to 22 cents per mile. So, again, this is a lot of money. So when we're talking about our income tax and the ability to do any of this, we have to look at this.
But they don't have income tax.
No,
Florida,
they,
I mean, Texas, they have no income tax.
that's right.
Right.
So, so you can think, okay, that money has to come from somewhere.
That's
Because
right.
the money primarily goes to schools,
Mhm.
and the tax rate you pay living in Texas is determined by the, school district
Yeah.
in which you live.
Yeah.
And, so you can almost say, well, okay, it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
We have to pay for our
That's right.
hospitals, we have to pay for roads, we have to pay for schools,
Yeah.
et cetera. But in Missouri, we do have income tax.
Exactly.
You know, so the first question I have is if you, apparently they want to generate more revenue in such a way that they can stick it into a bucket that they can take and spend in whatever way they deem necessary.
Yes.
Which, by the way, is not going to benefit you and me.
Yeah.
So, you know, Missouri is kind of like double dipping with these bad guys in government, if they're even thinking about toll roads. So you could say, okay, oh, does that mean great that we're gonna do away with income tax?
Yeah,
No.
no, that's right, that's right.
You know, so there's
We
another
agree.
thing to think about there, and in a sense, you know, they've gotta get the money from somewhere. So, okay, toll roads, fine, because, you know, you use the road you pay. Now, I don't agree with toll roads, but I'm just saying that, you could almost justify that. But see, Missouri can't justify that. They want both.
That's right.
They want your money, so
That's
your
right.
people, you know, they have their eye on your tax
And they've
dollars.
already asked for it, and the people have said no. So
Again,
they weren't saying we're gonna get rid of your income
Yeah, I
tax
think we
and
have
swap
enough.
it for a toll. They wanted a toll before and you said no. They wanted services before, you said no.
So that was the Hancock Amendment, we're gonna vote on it, we voted no, that's the beauty of the Hancock.
So this is St. Louis County, Missouri. So if you look at unincorporated, they're now almost 9% in unincorporated. Okay, so this shows the breakdown of that, and then the next, okay, but look at this. The St. Louis County sales tax is, depending on where you are in St. Louis County, all the way up to 12.238% right now. So they're like, look at Tennessee, they're doing it, blah, blah, blah. Do you remember what Tennessee was with everything?
Yeah, 9.7.
9. We're already here, okay? So look at this. The higher maximum sales tax rate, this is a higher maximum sales tax rate than 99% of counties nationwide. In the whole country, we're sitting there already, right now, in St. Louis County. Higher.
So let's address, they talk about Tennessee, 9.75, they talk about Texas, 8.25, and Orlando, Florida is at 6.5. St. Louis, we just talked about that. This is your county, Gasconade.
This is where you are. You're at 9.975,
Right now.
depending on where you are. It includes the sales tax of 4.225 and 1.875%. There is another, do you have this slide with the other breakdown?
I don't.
Okay.
So,
Each city has a little bit of a difference there in Gasconade County, that's why.
this is a video that I would normally play. You can go to Shield Maidens because we can't get the sound to work, but I'm going to tell you what it's about. The fella right there, this guy on the left, that's Ryan Height. He hosted this show. I love not being on the camera. Lisa got to. You can hear me. I'm chirping the whole time. But Lisa, and then that guy on the right is the Missouri Speaker Pro Tem of the House. So the second most powerful House representative in the state of Missouri. And what he says in this video, it was pretty appalling, and he didn't even know it was appalling. But he said, once this tax passes, we're going to invite everyone back to have a seat at the table to renegotiate their tax breaks and their tax credits. We're going to invite them all back to the table. And I looked at Lisa and said, negotiate, renegotiate. But he didn't even realize he was saying the quiet parts out loud. So that is one video. This is Mike Kehoe.
What's his name?
His name is Chad Perkins. This is your senator. This is your governor, Mike Kehoe. In this video, he says the same thing. He says once this tax passes, then we will invite. He calls them the advocacy groups. That's word for lobbyists.
Right.
And we will give them a seat at the table to renegotiate or negotiate their carve-outs. Now, Missouri Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick, I got tipped off that I needed to go watch this video. February 19th in the Budget Committee at 8 a.m. in the morning. Scott Fitzpatrick, who's your state auditor, comes into this hearing and he says, and you can watch it, I'll put it on, it's already on Shield Maidens, I'm sure. But he says to the committee in the House, it's the Budget Committee, he says, we are on a very bad path. In 2027, we are looking at a $2 billion deficit. So what he's basically saying is you had COVID relief fund stimulus from 2021 to 2025. You have spent like drunken sailors. You have given all these political favors out like candy. You have not cut the budget, and you don't still want to cut the budget, but as of 2025, there's no more Joe Biden stimulus money. But you guys are still spending like there is. You've got to do something right now. I've told you this before, I'm going to tell you this again. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying. One of the House reps said, what do you think about that Amendment 5? And that part of it really got me because he Well, it can be done. I've seen it done. However, there's gonna be a lot of special interests that are gonna have to be told no. That they don't get tax cuts, they don't get tax credits, they don't get carve-outs. I mean, a lot of them, practically all of them are gonna have to be told no, is what he says. Or that rate, that's your rate on all taxes of services and goods, will be, in his words, his word was, into the stratosphere. So I want you to understand that. So the two videos before this are two of the most powerful elected officials in the state of Missouri telling us there will be carve-outs. All their special interests where they get all their big payouts from lobbyists, they're going to get a seat at the table once this passes. And we'll negotiate for their carve-outs then. But what Scott Fitzpatrick is being honest about is he's saying if they do that, then that rate is going to go into the stratosphere. We've heard estimates, and they don't cut because they don't have the will to cut. We've been told even 17 to 19%. So again, those are all the unknowns.
And that's on top of what
Yeah.
already been
Yes.
shut down.
But don't they know how to do carve-outs? They carved out for marijuana,
Marijuana,
right?
yeah.
So they know how to do carve-outs.
Absolutely, and they should have waited to do marijuana, but it was so important.
Yes.
And you have with carve-outs, so I just want to say one thing here. Whenever we talk about carve-outs, you'll have a lot of people online that'll say, well, the governor said he's going to carve that out. The governor said, again, it's not in the legislation, which means everything. But it does mean that he's going to be going back with those same entities, and he may or he may not cut them out. But it's bad for us either way. If he doesn't cut out the medical, that means you have taxation on all your medical. Not good. And if he does do it, the auditor's been clear that then our tax rates are going to go through the stratosphere. So it's like, which one of those do you want? I don't want either. I want them to cut their budget. I want them to stop giving money out to all the lobbies.
Yes, sir.
I've heard it said that our neighboring state of Illinois has essentially the same budget that Missouri has with more than twice the population.
Yes.
That gives us a sense for the drunken sailor aspect of our
We have more
spending.
than doubled our budget inside of 10 years.
Yeah.
And the problem is with that, what we just ask, go back to pre-COVID spending, so the pre-stimulus,
Yeah.
cut the budget to that, and show us what that looks like if they have no stomach for that. Because I'm going to be honest, what I believe is that all of these, they're legislating through the budget. So like there's one that Lisa, I was appalled by, but it was a 2-mile road in the state fair for $20 million. That was just this year, okay? So that's just one teeny tiny example. We have no money, right? So all of these bills that pass and pass and pass, there's what's called a fiscal note attached to each one of them. They cost money, all right? But Scott Fitzpatrick says we don't have money. This is just from last week. The state of Missouri is facing a looming budget crisis, according to State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick. In December, Auditor Fitzpatrick issued a warning about Missouri's financial health, urging lawmakers to take immediate action to curb the trend of deficit spending before the state's general revenue fund is drained to critically low levels. Auditor Fitzpatrick warned lawmakers before the 2026 legislative session that Missouri was on an unsustainable spending path. A new report from his office says that after this warning, lawmakers approved an increase. And get this, after he warned them, they approved an increase in GR spending, putting the state on track for more than a $1.7 billion deficit fiscal year in 2027. The report projects Missouri's general revenue fund balance will shrink from a peak of about $5.8 billion in 2023 to roughly $600 million by the end of 2027, with reserves expected to run out in early fiscal year 2028. Now, okay, they're going to say, oh, no, this doesn't have anything to do, this income tax swap, nothing to do with that, okay? That's just coincidence that we are flat broke, that they're trying to find new ways to generate massive amounts of revenue. Now they're going to say, oh no, it has to be neutral. What do they call it?
Revenue neutral.
Revenue neutral. the
It's
one
revenue
we
neutral,
watched
why is
last
it one so
session
bad?
is that they have dedicated funds. And they're making more and more laws about dedicating funds that'll never hit, like we talked about, the pot, the general revenue. So you should have this one big huge pot of general revenue, right? And everything gets dumped into that one pot. But what they're doing is they're dedicating separate funds, like Lisa says, they're cooking the books.
And then that's what we have to make up all that, just the nine, because they say there's 9.8
Yeah.
million in revenue.
Billion.
Or
Yeah, billion, yeah.
And then they say that our income taxes right now make up 3 billion. No,
got it
no,
backwards.
I've got it backwards. Do I?
Say it again.
Current income
Current
tax
income
revenue
tax
is roughly
revenues.
8 to $9 billion.
Yes,
Oh, that's right,
That's right,
okay.
that's right.
Yeah.
Sales
But
tax
the
is
sales
about
tax
The
is
sales
about
tax.
3, okay, yeah.
So the issue just becomes, we should be dumping everything into that general revenue bucket, and then as we have it, dispersing.
Right.
But what we're watching, and Lisa can, on the next slide, we're gonna show you examples of last session too, of where they're creating new dedicated funds that never see the GR. So your reductions in your income taxes are based on the net surplus over a trigger. It'll trigger once they have over. But the problem is when they got another set of books and all these dedicated funds, and we expect over 5 years, there's gonna be a lot more dedicated funds because they don't want that GR, general revenue pot, to grow, so your income tax goes away.
So basically, dedicated funds get precedence over general, which is all of us are in the general, but the dedicated
That's right.
might only hit 1 or 2% of the state population.
right.
Because
Right.
they're special interest groups. And this is the same thing the federal government does, is stealing your tax dollars,
Yep.
and it is theft.
That's what
It
this
is
is.
total theft because the average person doesn't know.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter anyway because you have to pay your taxes.
That's right.
I'm a CPA. I deal with this every single day of my life, getting people out of trouble.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of it has to do with, it doesn't matter what store you have or what's going on. You owe tax, you owe tax. You know, at least the state's not gonna levy, federal certainly is. But I'm just saying that we all need to wake up and realize that all this money that we all pay in is not being used for the benefit of the average American citizen or average Missouri citizen. And it's got
That's right.
to stop.
It has to stop.
It has to
I
stop.
watched a state rep on Facebook talk about net neutral. They're like, you have to say net neutral, net neutral, net neutral. And so her explanation, she was on a radio show and she said, net neutral is up to you, okay? So once you spend the equivalent of your income tax,
You can just stop eating.
then you can just stop spending. Like if you want a new TV, you just go to a garage sale instead of Walmart and get it, so you don't have to pay that income tax. So when you start hearing these people,
Well, see, they know how to do it. They know how to do it.
I know.
They know how to cut back,
they
right?
don't want to.
You don't use those funds for things that don't benefit
Right.
everybody and take away your special interest. You know how to do it. Tell your special interest people, you know.
That's right.
Maybe you should get a second job.
That's right.
Maybe you should save your money.
With the second set of books, I'll say this one thing, and that is also an important thing. We are now competing with what's going into general revenue. So not only is it a dedicated fund, but that was already in general revenue before. So that means we're going to have to meet that as well, even though it's not coming in at all.
To the
So
point.
with each one of these things, they're actually diverting. So you had a certain portion that went into general revenue, and now it will no longer go into general revenue at all, but that exists on the books as if that's part that we have to get to even get there.
So
So it's twofold.
just to see, again, Chad Perkins made a post on Facebook. It was on 93, he asked Tracy Ellis, who's with 93.3, the owner. He asked her if she would post this, because we had that debate, and he had to make sure everyone knew we were liars. So he posted this, he asked her to post it. There seems to be a lot of experts on Facebook, let me be clear. There has been no conversation about raising the sales tax in Missouri.
It's all about
What
raising
has
taxes.
been discussed is, now get this part, over 30 years, as the economy grows, income tax comes down. It's very gradual and nuanced, remember, over 30 years. It won't happen overnight, and if the economy doesn't grow in a given year, the tax rate won't come down. However, we do know, both in theory and in practice, that as you lower taxes, the economy grows. This is a historical fact. As the taxes come down, the economy grows. I'll repeat myself. Nobody in Jefferson City has any plan to raise a sales tax. Those on social media saying that this will happen are at best uninformed and possibly just lying to scare people for some self-serving political reason. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Oh, well, let me just tell you, I screenshot it within 2 hours. Somebody probably read that and said, hey, dummy, take that down. Because that is exactly what we're doing. We're going to raise your sales tax. It will take over 30 years, but you got to take that down. Because you look like a fool. Because again, we can read, and if you just invest in the time to read what the legislation says, he looks a fool. He looks a fool. So, this is just super funny, but I can't believe this sound doesn't work. And I know it's Americans for Prosperity has been very, very invested in pushing this issue. Americans for Prosperity is very, in my opinion, un-American. But Camilla Peterson, who is the head lobbyist in Missouri of Americans for Prosperity, in this video, she says boldly, and she has a back really fast, that over 15 years, we'll see this help in Missouri. Maybe probably in a year. I mean, a year. It's almost a year.
Last week.
This is last week. So Americans for Prosperity, who's pushing this initiative, their head lobbyist made a faux pas and admitted that it will at least take 50 years to get rid of your income tax, and we say if ever. If ever. 15. Again, trust. So I spoke at an event on Saturday in Trenton, Missouri, packed with awesome people. While I was going over this slide, Maisie Christensen, who's a little superstar state rep, she comes in and she's like, hey, Missouri Promise is out there putting these brochures on everybody's car. So I want you to know who Missouri Promise is, okay? You're going to see commercials, and you're going to see postcards, you're going to hear radio ads. They're going to flood everything. It's called Missouri Promise. A mysterious group pours $1.9 million into Missouri's income tax phase-out campaign. This was June 4th. Last week, a mysterious nonprofit tied to Delaware poured $1.9 million into a campaign to replace Missouri's income tax with expanded sales taxes, a high-dollar donation that's drawn scrutiny about who is bankrolling a plan to overhaul the state's tax structure. Missouri Promise, Inc., a nonprofit incorporated last year in Delaware, made the 7-figure contribution to Missouri Promise PAC. The main campaign seeking to convince voters to approve the tax proposal, which will be called Amendment 5 in August. So ask yourself, what we keep saying as Missourians, we are sick of out-of-state interests with dark money trying to influence the voters of our state. It's how we got the legalization of recreational marijuana. It's how we got abortion laws that are death, that kill our babies until the time they're born, the 9th month. They're coming for your guns, and they want this to cross the line. They want our eliminate your income tax bill to cross the line with voters. Ask yourself why. Why does a company or corporation in Delaware care so much about Missouri? So every time you see Missouri Promise, just understand it's the dark money that we all talk about trying to influence our elections.
And the nonprofits.
Oh,
Many
yeah.
nonprofits are nothing but fraud.
Absolutely.
And they are
That's what this
completely the
is.
opposite. Like the name,
Yeah.
Missouri Promise.
Yes.
The name itself is a joke. They
That's
come
what
up
they
with
do.
these names. Yeah, to make everybody think, oh wow, nonprofit.
Yeah,
This is just so you know, net neutral. We're about to close with this, but
yeah, here's what Ben Keithley handed out at the,
yeah, Missouri Promise.
embarrassed to say that the Franklin County River Extension Committee had him out to speak.
I actually spoke with him last night
Well,
before I
this is where
started
he
speaking.
handed
I
out.
pointed to him and said, just for the purpose of transparency, everybody needs to know. He's with, and I'm supposed to speak again. We're supposed to speak on Saturday again in the Lincoln Days. And we just got a call today that Missouri Promise is trying to inject themselves into that meeting as well, which I'm great with because I'm going to call them out every single time. So this is just, Lisa's going to talk about this. This is what we talk about, legislation that silos funds.
So the siloed funds is a dedicated fund. So as they were talking about reducing and eliminating the income tax, I'm in other hearings, and they're saying the opposite. That they're giving tax credits to corporations. Why would you be doing that if you're getting ready to get rid of the income tax? And also diverting all these funds. So in each one of these committee hearings, I just point out the obvious. What are you doing here? I thought you were trying to reduce and eliminate everyone's income tax. Yet you're siloing the funds. You never get to do that. And you're giving out tax credits. Why would you do that? Why would you give out tax credits if we're going to reduce and eliminate the income tax? Because there would be no tax credit to give at that point. So this is what I mean by we're competing on both ends. So if you look here in this HB 2423 by Okerling, this is, by the way, these are all Republicans doing this.
Yeah. And they're supposed to be conservative?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, Rhino.
yeah.
Yeah.
Our governor's one of them too.
Yeah, so this is a
They're owned
Republican.
by the lobbyists.
So this had, banks went to dedicated funds. So this is licensing for banks went to a dedicated special fund, which was the Division of Finance Fund for the regulation of banks, trusts, and other corporations. Anything in that fund, so this is what exists right now on our books. Anything in the fund remaining beyond 15% was transferred to the general revenue. So you see, then that was all going into the general revenue. So that's sitting in that pot. What are they doing now? They moved this to a consumer licensing fund that no money is transferred to the general revenue. So that's one example. Let's go to the second one. Premium, sorry. Premium finance companies. Licensing fees went to the Division of Finance Fund. Now it goes to the Consumer Licensing Fund. This went to the general revenue. That money there went to the general revenue, and now it removes it and puts it into that siloed fund. Number 3, same thing. Number 4, same thing. Number 5, same thing. 6, same thing.
This is just
7.
one bill. One.
Where does that money go? When they take it out of general fund and it goes into these other funds, what is the money being used for? Who gets to spend that money?
That's a great question.
And what bill was that one?
That one was with, that was
2423?
HB 2423, that's just one. Shelton had one this year that we had, I was listening to it, I can't remember, but it was happening with repetition, like we were both picking up on it. I listened to that, she's there, but they are siloing funds because if this passes, they don't want everything to hit the general revenue bucket, because then it was supposed to be a trigger. So for every 20 million, let me just tell you what their first piece of legislation that was a little more specific said, and we ate them alive. That for the general revenue, for a surplus over the year prior, okay, of $20 million, it would hit a trigger. And that would reduce your taxes by 0.01%. So the average Missourian, the average, pays $1,500 a year. So with that revenue trigger of general revenue, for every one of those that are 20 million, 0.01, that's 15 cents. Okay, you guys getting that?
Yeah, it's never gonna reach it.
Never gonna reach it. And it capped it at 1.6%, that was $15, okay? So when you read their intention in the first version of this, and we just, like I said, people were like, CPAs, like, this is nothing, this is never gonna happen.
It'll never happen. They'll keep taking money out, and you'll never reach that limitation.
I want to read this to you. These are our last 3 slides. So in the legislation that passed in Missouri that the House and Senate voted on, they actually included their own language to be sent to you at the ballot box, okay? Now listening to everything we just taught you, I want you to think about how deceptive this is, okay? It says, shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to, this was going to be what was on your ballot, phase out the individual income tax based on revenue growth, reduce personal property and other local taxes when local revenues increase, modify the sales and use tax to eliminate income tax and reduce local taxes, and protect local funding for public schools and other purposes. Now, if you were not educated, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Well, except for you know, I'm from Crawford County,
Yeah.
and believe me, we're pretty poor over there, okay?
Yeah.
And now we're going to reduce our local sales taxes when we can't even get by with what we're getting? How
That
does
is
that make
such
sense?
a great point, and that's such a great point, that the state is going to basically be able to commandeer with the way they're going to write legislation, which we can't even see, and they have lifted the Hancock for 5 years to give themselves an absolute license. So this is what they were gonna say, but you know what happened? There was a lawsuit, okay? There was a lawsuit that just got decided at the appellate court, the Western District Appellate Court, and they said, no, that language is way too sensitive. You're not telling people what this is really doing. So this just came out June 6th of 2026. The Missouri Appeals Court rewrites Amendment 5 language, ballot language, to make it clear that it does allow a new tax. This is the new language. Require legislative phase out of the individual state income tax based on revenue growth, other one said that, and authorize, this is what was added, the expansion of sales and use taxes. Curtail constitutional limits on taxing goods and services, and require local tax rate cuts without reducing. So really what they did is they just added the expansion of sales and use tax.
It's still a bunch of hooey.
It is 100%.
It's too general, too, you know.
Too general.
And too much ifs.
I think that's the thing, if we can just recap really quickly. The most important thing to realize with Amendment 5, you don't have to vote yourself a way out of income taxes. The state legislature has the authority right now to do it. They're already doing it. They just are trying to lure you to the ballot with a lie. And that's all they want you to think you're doing, but you don't have to even vote for something like that. Number 2, what you're really doing is you're voting yes to lift the ban that exists in your Constitution right now as a protection that keeps the state from expanding the tax on goods and taxing all services. That is your constitutional protection locked in right now. You will be opening that up, and they will be repealing it. And the third thing, the most precious part of a constitutional republic right now is the consent of the governed. The Hancock Amendment, known as 18E in this legislation, is the most prized piece of legislation in our state, probably the history of our state. It says you cannot raise taxes on the citizens of Missouri, whether it be a local jurisdiction in the state, without their vote. They're repealing that for 5 years. They're going to do whatever they want for 5 years. And those are what you're really being asked to allow. So I think when you start, and there's more to it, like the highway fund, and there's more to it. But it also has the ability, like you said, to reach into your local. And we didn't cover that because we can go way into the weeds for 3 more hours. But there's a lot more to it. But those are the most basic, important facts that I encourage every single one of you to go to the piece of legislation. Just go to missouri.house.gov. You can put in HJR 7173. It's all there. So, are there any questions that we can? Yes, sir.
One thing is, the same Scott Fitzpatrick audit we talked about.
Yes.
It mentioned there that our state budget, every 43 cents of our state budget is dependent on federal funds, and those are actually drying up soon as we're starting to see more programs go down. So when you're seeing why these taxes are put forward in this way, it's to make up for the spending problem that they have, the addiction, and you hope you don't see it. It's what I call a 3-card monitor showing it.
You're right. We have a spending problem, and that's really what I hope everybody takes away. I mean, we have money in Missouri, and we could be fine, but the special interests are such a money suck.
And I'll say, this last session, they were asked to cut 50 million, which is nothing. And they put that cut in the budget, and the lobbyists went back in, and they just folded like that.
Put
And
it
they
back
said,
in.
I don't even know how we're going to do this going forward. That was them telling on them, saying, I don't even know how we're going to do this. If they can't cut 50 million, what is this going to look like when we've got to take a scalpel to the whole thing?
50%.
So here's the deal. If we vote no, they have no choice. They're going to have to be some pretty hard decisions made pretty quick. We have no money.
Yes,
Are we certain that when they say revenue neutral, are they talking about the general fund revenue only, or are they talking about the 56 billion or 54 billion that they've gotten used to spending right now?
well, I believe what they're
It's-
talking about is the general revenue fund.
But they don't say that.
That's exactly right. But we believe because of the siloing and the tax credits and all the ability they'll have for 5 years to silo off funds to keep the net, because they use that in the first piece of the legislation, to keep the net of the general revenue. That's what they were basing the triggers on for the reductions. They got rid of that in the second version because too many people became too wise to it and realized this is nothing.
So that's where the silos are gonna fill with
Correct.
federal money
Correct.
before they even consider.
The GR is gonna be cooking the books. We got 2 sets of books. We're gonna be looking at the GR, is what we believe, but they're gonna give themselves incredible license to write the tax code 4 or 5 years.
Well, revenue neutral is never mentioned in the bill. It says substantially
Right.
equal to.
Yeah.
Which
So
who knows
there is
what
no
that
such
means.
thing as revenue neutral is substantially equal to.
That's exactly
Well,
right.
the
It's a
first
great
thing I
point.
asked Trent last year, or 2 years ago, whatever it was, when they came and talked to us, I was like, well, if it's revenue neutral, what's the point?
Exactly.
I'll give you $5 out of my left pocket, or I'll give you $5 out of my right pocket, but you still only get $5. You're after more money.
I'm gonna say this, and Lisa has brought this to the forefront. We've talked about this a lot on Shield Maidens. They are passing what's called these compacts, and they are happening at lightning speed. And what that means is that people from other states who are licensed, you have to be licensed, they're allowing them without a reciprocity agreement. They're actually creating subparts of the government called compacts. But the problem is all of these people who work so hard to be licensed, a compact committee is gonna write the rules and bring people in from out of state, kind of like the traveling nurses and whatnot. They don't pay their income tax in the state of Missouri. So what we're watching is the Republicans are literally dismembering what it means to be a sovereign state. You know, that we have our own interests, that are our interests. But it's just this weird dynamic of watching legislation. And like I said, we could talk for 3 hours of piecing it all together. And that's where, like I said, listening to the podcast, and we talk about it because we're trying to figure it out. Because it's just so destructive what they've done. But they should have to answer for it. A no vote forces them to figure out what they're gonna do. And I'll say this, a no vote means so often they're legislating through the budget giving political favors, and then what happens with this massive amount of money or these tax credits, they're coming back into, in part, these super PACs. And these super PACs are what are electing the same people who are writing this legislation and shoving it down our throats. So if the super PACs don't have money and the lobbyists don't have jobs, Missouri may actually be in a way better place really soon with a no vote. So yes, sir.
I'd like to thank you for doing this together. I guess I'm kind of skeptical about what the impact of this vote's gonna be at all, because they're telling us to trust them. And we trusted them 3 times, telling them we didn't want a gas tax, and yet we have one.
That's right.
And they voted it in, and it, from what I can see, it's here, there. Did it go against the Hancock Amendment? I think it did, but it didn't. So they've already laid out their game plan.
Yeah.
So even if we vote against it, they still gonna try to do
Well,
it.
you find, you know, you can find a loophole for anything. So I will say that I think it's always, you know, this, I'll talk about a divine plan. You know, I say God's in this all the time. Because as we had it, there's even something called the Design Build Project program. And they passed that this year. And I was telling her, this is awful, this is liberal. It's like you put all these things together and it's called Design Build.
And we can't figure out how to do it.
Yeah, well, like,
We've never
why
started.
are they doing this and why are they shoving this? Well, when I started to investigate some of these to the depths, and this will get around to what you're saying, is I found in 2006, a Republican senator had legislation about toll roads, and lo and behold, what was in there? Design build projects with the toll roads. And I called her and I said, you're never gonna believe this. It was in 2006, and so they tried to ram it. But the thing was, they couldn't ram it because the court said, no, there are these constitutional protections and you can't go around them. So they haven't figured out a way to go around them. And if they could, they would. And so they do it with services, they'll do it with toll roads. I mean, I'm with you. If they can find some loophole, they'll do it. But up to this point, they haven't found one.
It'll be up to us to have a Missouri Bastille Day, and you can start at the headquarters of the flag.
I will say this, right now we're watching the six Senate races that Sophie's running, there's a couple others. These people are in the lead, you know why? The establishment is all pro A5. Overwhelmingly the public is against A5. So the candidates that have the courage to take a stand against the establishment, they are the favored candidates. Data centers, I'm going to touch on data centers, and I'll tell you this. It is an incredibly important issue. If you are in an area like this beautiful, beautiful country, the Gaston County, Franklin County, it makes me want to cry. I'm from Marshfield, Missouri, Webster County, and I live at Lake of the Ozarks. And I already say, my plate is so full. Like, God, don't give me one more thing to worry about, because I got so many things. And I get a text message about 8 weeks ago. And I'm just like loaded, because she keeps my brain just all the time, and I'm reading, and I'm researching, and but I got a text message from one of my friends who's on the Board of Aldermen in the city, because you got to differentiate city from county, okay? That in Camden County, they were doing a work session at the city about 500,000 square foot data center being brought to Lake of the Ozarks. What? So I looked at that text, I thought, surely not. Like here, I live here. Right?
500,000 square feet, that's small.
Right. And that's where I live. Like, this can't happen. Sure enough, what happened, and as God would have it, I actually sat as the chairman of the rewrite for planning and zoning in Camden County. So I told my counterparts, we gotta stop everything. We need to draft an ordinance with respect to data centers. So really long story short, it's an incredible ordinance. And it just basically said, if you bring a data center here, you can't drill any well. You can't use our rivers, lakes, ponds, and streams. You're gonna have to contain rainwater and figure out how to do that. And that's doable because my counterpart, one of them's an engineer. You are we're not going to use our grid, our electrical grid. You're gonna have to figure out how to power this thing yourself. You're rich, you're Google, you're Amazon, you'll figure it out. But you're gonna have to get a special use permit. It's not gonna be cheap. Because we're gonna have to send somebody in there every single week to check on you to make sure you're doing what your special permit says you're doing, right? And if you're not, we're gonna fine you $500,000 to $1 million a day. I mean, this is kind of, the vibrations, the sound, the vibrations are what Josh Hawley, okay? Josh Hawley, we have been said if we're against data centers, we are part of the CCP by the rhinos. Not even kidding you.
Oh, we know.
Your rhinos are calling us part of the CCP.
Yep.
I am a 9th generation Missourian, okay? I don't even know anybody. A Chinese. Not that I would love to, but I just don't. Like, so ridiculous, so insane. They're insane. So the thing is, so what we did is, I'll just tell you this. We, when Josh Hawley, a video came out of Josh Hawley having a question back and forth with RFK. And he was talking about electromagnetic frequencies with data centers. And RFK said, oh, we have studied over 10,000 cases in a scientific way that we can prove EMFs cause rare cancers, neurological diseases, nosebleeds, headaches. We have the scientific evidence. What data centers do is it is a heavily concentrated area of EMFs. It's not like your cell phone, right? It's not like a small bit of EMF. It is a massive concentration of EMF, right? So we know this is legitimate. But what I watched in Webster County, now what we did where I'm at, and I'm like this for a reason, because we're kind of all like this. But literally, our commissioners had not one problem signing the ordinance we brought to the table right then and there. Within a week, I called a meeting like for the public. Over 500 people showed up. Only 350 got in. And we were 100% against them. What we found, and what I'll tell you to watch for, if you don't have an ordinance, I can help you, but you need to put a moratorium in place in your city, Because what they like to do is build these data centers outside of the city,
No,
and they want to annex into.
In the middle of
Well,
us,
they do too, yeah.
right in the middle.
But we're watching them want to build right on the edge so they don't have to deal with any planning and zoning regulations until they're done. And then they want to annex into your city for your water, for your sewer. They want to annex once they're done, but they don't want to have any regulations. Because some of your smaller counties, so if you're a third-class county without planning and zoning, they're going to say, oh, there's nothing you can do. Sorry. That is not true. State statute 192.300 is the general welfare clause. If you have an elected health board, an elected city council, your commission with 192.300, they're doing it all across Missouri. They're putting moratoriums and ordinances in place to protect the health and welfare of the people of that community. And what they're saying is, until we know what you're going to do to our water table, we're going to block this thing until we have an ordinance in place to protect the people of our county. We're a class 1, and we have partial planning and zoning. We just adopted, our planning and zoning just adopted an incredible 36-page ordinance last week. I am willing to share, we've been sharing with people all over Missouri, but what I'll tell you is Webster County, I've never seen anything like that. We did a town hall about the first data center because there was a rumor there was a data center coming to town. They just closed on it. We had a meeting that same week in Webster County, Marshfield, Missouri. 350 people packed into a room. We're getting more in it. Their concerns were legitimate. That was on like a Tuesday. The next Tuesday, the county commission thought they would mock the people of Webster County because it was only a small but vocal room. And so they chose to have a meeting on a Monday morning at 10 a.m. whenever they thought everyone would be at work. The auditorium held 700 people. 800 people showed up. They shut it down. My husband looked at me because I've dragged him to so many meetings. And he looked at me and goes, I have never seen anything like this before. What happened with that data center, they cleared the land, okay? They graded it, they dug a well, they connected to this, there was a substation on the lot next door. They actually had the data center online within 30 days. They didn't build the data center, they rolled in all these trucks. So what, I just want you to be aware of this, what they're calling data centers now are research campuses, innovation and research campuses, innovation campuses, and what they're doing is they're partnering with higher ed to do research. So you may have an 800-acre parcel, but they may plant 40 data centers on site. And so they call it research. How do we learn this? We just got a ton of documents that I read. So what happens is your local elected officials will sign an NDA. So the secrecy is what makes people angry.
Yes.
The lying, the secrecy, the NDAs, that's what sends people over the edge, and it should. They didn't do that to my commissioners because my commissioners said, don't ever ask us to sign an NDA because we're never going to sign it. If we have to keep a secret from our constituents, you don't have our vote. But they did to the city. So they sent them over a report, which are sunshine. Which sunshine's like sometimes your best weapon. But it said confidential and proprietary. So the aldermen were all terrified they were going to get sued if they talked to the public about it. Let me just tell you this, if my best advice, if they're not willing to sign an ordinance, get a moratorium in place for the city that you live inside of, the city limits, or the county, your health department can do it if it's elected. Get the moratorium in place, but because before you know it, it's too late to fight.
They won't, in fact,
And
they
here,
won't do
Gaston,
it.
you
They
gotta
got date
call
shots.
them now.
Yes,
You gotta
date
call
shots,
your
which is,
commissioners now. I've already talked to the commissioners because I'm running and data centers are big in Montgomery County, so I asked Gaston County commissioners, I said, will you look to put a moratorium on data centers until we can get a better handle?
Yes.
And their answer was, there's nowhere in Gasconade County they're gonna look for data centers.
Yeah.
So we can drive all up and down 19 right here.
Oh, yes,
And I'll
they
tell you,
will.
right there, right outside Owensville is
Yeah.
Data Center Central, if they come in here with them.
And when they say once they excavate, this is what we were told in Webster County, once there's concrete in the ground, you're done.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the thing is, don't stop pushing. They can't ignore you. The crowds just get bigger and bigger. Webster County said for 30 days, there's nothing we can do. We're a third class county. We don't have planning and zoning. They want you to get planning and zoning, but you don't need it if they just have the courage to do what's right.
You don't.
So the issue becomes is keep showing up.
And if they don't, so
They
there's
don't.
an answer to there's an answer to that also, just so you know, and it's a recall. And so every single county has a method for recall.
Of
It's an
what?
amount of
Recall what?
recall of the members. So
Of the commissioners?
yeah,
We can't, the governor appointed Dave Schatz.
it doesn't matter. You can
They told us,
tell-
we got it, the
I
lawyer
don't
told us
care
we
what city
can't.
they're gonna tell you
Yeah.
that you've got a recall mechanism, and each county has a recall mechanism, and they have to listen to the recall mechanism. I mean, it's just, it's
But I would just say
Do you know the
this.
statute by chance?
Marshfield said for 30 days. For 30
We
days.
have it somewhere. 'Cause
We
we
can't
did
do
it.
anything, there's nothing we can do. You know what happened? The noise got so loud, people kept showing up. They were used to people showing up at their commission meetings. People kept showing up and beating the drum. They didn't go away. You know what happened last week? Marshfield put a moratorium on data centers. Webster County did.
We've asked for 6
So,
months and they
I
won't do it.
know. And it would be the most frustrating thing imaginable, but you know what's gonna happen, just like you? Good people are gonna start to run. The people, I will say this, and my husband looked at me and just said, I have never seen anything like this. Sometimes you gotta get to a really bad place, and for people to wake up and understand what's happening, to come together. I look at this room full of people. You guys, to just be here and invest in learning. If 2 people tell 2 people, we tell 2 people. It's all it takes. It just takes people to show up. You've shown up. And I just applaud you and I thank you so much. I mean, if you love where you live enough, like I'm telling you, been traveling, speaking, meeting, seeing people. And every time I drive past a little house in the country, I'm like, that person is going to be affected by this tax. And it hurts me.
Yeah.
And my grandparents are rural Missouri, dairy farmers. Like those people are precious, hardworking, but there are people making choices right now between heat in the winter. You know, they're making choices about driving their car because gas is expensive, groceries are expensive, insurance is unsustainable, house insurance on real estate taxes, and now they're gonna bring us this. The Missouri legislature has not been working. You know what we should have had last session? We should have had some kind of moratorium for 1 year on data centers in Missouri.
Yeah.
But nobody was talking about it. We have really good candidates that are running for office that are talking about it. And we feel like that's such an incredibly important step. So, I mean, if anybody needs help with the ordinance language, John can get you in touch with me. Second, we have 2 different versions. Third class county, no planning and zoning, that's predicated on 192.300. That's the health and welfare. So don't let anybody say, well, we're in the country, so shucks, there's nothing we can do. It's like, give me a break. They're not gonna they can't put like a toxic waste dump right next to you.
This is America, right?
But you have to be careful, like everyone says, well, just ban them. That's a careful road to walk. You can regulate them to a point that they have to make some really hard decisions and be answerable to the public. But I will help any of you that I can because we've done some really good work. But there's just so many unknowns with data centers. Everyone says, well, you have to have them, how do you work Facebook?
Oh, shoot.
That is what they
Right?
believe.
Yeah, that's what they do.
It's just stupidity.
And on Amendment 5 on the TV, they're saying, you know, that's what it's for, these data centers, you know?
I mean, let me address that. So going back to data centers, just really quick, like this lady said, on TV they're advertising, we're gonna tax these data centers.
Oh,
But let me tell you what we have seen. So this is another little nugget. So what the data centers were being brought in under was something called an opportunity zone. okay? Yep. Opportunity zones, they did it 10 years ago, they're doing it now, but now they've brought in data centers. But you can't call them data centers because a lot of people say, that's not a data center. Okay, whatever, research campus, okay? Like you gotta get your language right, but the point is it's the opportunity zone. There's also a special kind of tax incentive that is for rural areas. So I say she's the city cousin,
So
I'm the
Greenfield,
country cousin.
they used to have what was called brownfields, and they were tax credits for brownfields, which were contaminated land, that's why it was called brownfields. But then they just started recently, because I think they had this on their horizon, these greenfields, and I'm like, why would you have greenfields? Because it was literally just rural green fields.
Pasture, cropland.
So what we're watching is they're treating rural America like we're the wasteland.
The wasteland, yes.
They underestimate rural America. They just underestimate us.
You know, y'all are around this so much, but you say good people are gonna run.
Yeah.
And my fear is, I think good people have run, and what happens to them? When they run and they are not the same person, a year later, they're corrupt, they're not the same people. I mean, if good people, I mean,
They need
what happens?
support
How does that
from
happen?
them there,
Or
too.
is it lobby? Is it money? Is it, I mean,
Everybody wants one answer, and the truth of the matter is, there isn't a one-size-fits-all to answer that question. I'd say the majority of them just want to fit in. If we took this group, right now, you would be shocked, like they've done experiments. And I said, you showed me a triangle, and I said square, and everybody else started to say square, and you knew it was a triangle, and they get to you say square. Or, you know, when it's a triangle. And it's such groupthink, and it's like a fraternity, and there's not many people that can withstand that and stand on their own. And that is the biggest part of it. The biggest that I've seen. Is there corruption? Yes. Do they get bribes? Yes. Is there dossiers on them because they sleep with women or men or whatever? Yes. All these things exist.
Jeffrey, I've seen a lot of them.
Yeah.
They bring it. So Lisa and I know this will shock everybody, okay? We went to, I can't believe it. Okay, so we're just curious, okay? And so 2 years ago, they have what's called a fall caucus. All right, a fall caucus. Well, what's that? I didn't know. I wanted to know. And so it was a Big Cedar Lodge. So I said, well, let's just go. Let's just go. And so what we found was the fall caucus, all of your major lobbyists from across Missouri buy a seat at the table. And they are with your senators. It was the Senate fall caucus. They're with your elected senators. Those that haven't even been sworn in yet were part of that group. To see the disgusting display, because Lisa and I one night, I don't know how far I'm going to take
I was like, look, they're going to be at the bar. I know these sleaze
I
balls.
said
They're going to be at the bar. Let's go at the bar. We'll go early. They won't even know
So
we're
we
there.
found
We'll hide in
ourselves
the corner.
in a corner,
And
dark
this is what we
corner.
did.
And I just get nervous because I was like, oh my gosh, this can't be. And then they all start pouring in. I just could not even believe what I was seeing. They're all best friends. They're all like drunk and rubbing up on each other. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Debauchery beyond what you really
But
felt.
that's what happens with your senators. Like, I haven't seen the House, but the House goes on a big old float trip with a float trip caucus. Where all the lobbyists and they drink and they, so it is completely, when I call it a frat party, I've seen it. And so we're not separating the lobbyists from the elected, and they actually accept the lobbyists as the institutional knowledge, like they're the experts. They bring them in, and when I tell you that they wine and dine them every single night during session, they don't have time to read the legislation. Now they don't, because they are at cocktail parties and cookouts, and it is the most insane thing. Like, they're sent there to do a job, and all they do is party almost every single night. A lot of them come in so hungover. Mike Moon, this was hilarious, but it was late one night, and they were filibustering that night. What's his name went out and stood in the well.
Oh, yeah.
So one of your senators wanders out into what's called the well, and that's the area in front of the dais, right? He just stands there. And they kept saying his name. Senator. Senator, you're not supposed to be there. Senator, remove yourself from Senator. And Mike Moon finally just said, I was listening. He was like, he's drunk.
I got the video.
You have it?
We were there that night.
Were you there?
It was Burn Skinner. He was murdering his skull, staggering across.
My senator was not a problem.
I'll tell the truth.
But I was just telling you,
We all get a little sleep.
it's like a big fraternity, big sorority, and there are a few really good people, very few. And we applaud them, and you know who they are because we talk about them. Bryant Wolfen is pretty outstanding. Maisie Christensen, who's pregnant, having a baby, she was a bright spot, a little firecracker, but you know, you gotta respect her, she's having a baby. So she's gonna pause that for now. It gives me goosebumps, you know, because she's just such a little advocate. Mike Moon is incredible in the Senate.
Lisa Durnell.
Lisa Durnell's great. Keith Elliott.
Keith Elliott.
Burt Whaley.
Bob Titus.
That's it. I will say this and we'll let you go if you have any other questions, but what we watched, they call it whipping, okay? And so when you have a bill that leadership wants, they whip it super hard. And that means they go into every state rep's office and they threaten them. They tell them they're watching them. This is what you better do if you ever want to be on a committee or be a chairman or blah, blah, blah. And if you don't do it, if you don't vote the way you're supposed to, we're watching.
Is that the lobbyists?
No, that's your
That's the
leadership.
leadership.
So when they want a unanimous vote of the Republicans, so they can say, well, every single Republican voted for it. But to hear the story of the Republicans who were voting no, to the abuse, and I know you're like, that sounds so middle school.
Yeah.
Guys, the Capitol in Jefferson City is the biggest mean girl club I have ever seen in my whole entire life. Now, I am a fighter. I know that God has not called me to run for office because I just can't. I can barely even go and sit and watch. Like, I probably get thrown out of the chamber because it's so frustrating. And I get hives. And I have to keep my mouth shut. And it's hard. She does it every day. And you know what? Because there's no video, the play-by-play that she gives and the high five she talks about and the things she sees at 3 o'clock in the morning that nobody else would know about unless she's there by herself. She's my best friend. But I don't even know if Missouri knows what a debt of gratitude just to have somebody calling balls and strikes while those people are in there. They hate her guts. And that is the biggest badge of honor you could possibly wear. So do you have anything you want to say in closing?
Only one thing.
Yeah.
And that is with Armor Mind, we started this new educational tool, so I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I went through all the legislation for 2025. And that gives you the ability to be able to, like, it's all the highlights that are in the legislation
That passed and became law.
that became your laws, okay, and who did them. And I'm doing the same thing this year. However, it took a really, really long time. So I'm finally done with 2025. And so I've got these wonderful books. So if you want to nerd out on your state legislation, here it is. And so it's got every single play-by-play in it, who did it, the big part.
She opened a bed. And whatever it is.
And, yeah, and
Does it show how everybody, all the representatives are
it's
sitting
not
voting?
with every single vote in here. What it did is we did a score. It would have taken too much. So we did a scorecard on the back, and you see how I rated it. But it also, what we really wanted to do was show you the highlights in here, and then I give my commentary. And if you disagree with my commentary, then it allows you to rate it any way that you want to rate it. Does that make sense? So then you would rate the person if you said, well, I disagree with that. Like, I would have been fine with that. Then you know that your person here on the scorecard would have actually rated higher. Now, I'm a tough critic. So if I think it's going to hurt the people of Missouri, that bill has a failing grade in my book.
And she explains why. What's really important about this is like when it's again. So when somebody new gets elected and they need to know how to reference, how to fix what we've broken, they don't have to guess. It's right here. And that is why we believe this is an incredibly important tool to hold elected now accountable. They may be turned out, but this is an archive for the purpose of what is so broken that we need to fix going forward, and for people to know how badly it's broken. We can fix it if we know what's broken, but if we never know, it's a guessing game. So this is just an incredibly valuable tool. They're selling, to cover the cost, they're $45. If you want to get one for your state rep or senator, or they can order them. But it's just a really cool, just a guide to show people what we're talking about and how we're losing our liberties. In the state of Missouri last year, something called QUIP passed. You guys know what QUIP means? So construction work in progress. It was part of the Senate Bill 4. It had been in your Constitution. It was a Constitution or was it statute?
They actually put it in statute.
Yeah. So what it was, since 1976, QUIP, construction work in progress, had been solidified and against the law. Last year, SB 4, Senate Bill 4, actually lifted what was called the protections of QUIP that said you cannot charge ratepayers for utilities for infrastructure that's being built while it's being built. It has to be online, and they have to be able to take benefit from it being online in order for you to make them pay. Last year they changed that, and it was what we believe largely for data centers, because it is water, sewer, gas, and electric. Now they can build infrastructure for public utilities to end users, data centers, and they can embed that rate into your utility bill. The Missouri supermajority of Republicans did this to you. Also, your water rights, the water, Gascony River, I live on Lake of the Ozarks, your water rights you had, you could, or at least tell about this. This is another really big one that pertains to data centers and how you're being sold out. It's in the book. Tell them what it was.
Well, you had what was called perfect riparian water rights. And the way that that works is that they say, well, anybody could ship out all of our water to China. And that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
They could have, but we didn't, because we had these perfect riparian water rights. That's why you could have it in abundance and it was cheap. That means that I could be over here and I ship out all the water to China, but she's my neighbor. And as soon as her water table's drained, and your water table's drained, and your water table's drained, what are you going to do? You're going to go to a lawyer eventually and say, we're running brown muck outside of our water faucet. And we noticed that that big bad data center moved in, and ever since then now, we can't access water. And so an attorney is going to take up your case for you because that big bad data center also has dollar signs attached to it. And so it fixed the problem itself because nobody would come in to do that because we had these perfect riparian water rights. And once I impeded on your water rights, there was the ability to have a suit and be liable. What they did is they put it under a permit system, so they got to determine who could use all the water and who couldn't, and who had beneficial use. And by the way, the end user data center, by the way, they didn't say data center, but anybody who was an end use user didn't even have to get a permit. They just legalized it. So it took away our ability. We could still sue, but we wouldn't win. Because now we have this
And they did that to us last year. So again, what's really important to know is you gotta know what's broke so you know how to fix it. And you know, call us crazy, but we believe little bit by little bit, engaging with people across Missouri like we are making a difference and we'll continue to make a difference by the will, by the grace of God. Yes, sir?
Question, so I'm a professional hydrogeologist.
Yeah.
And I've worked on a whole bunch of these data center things for concerned citizens, et cetera. What you just said to me is a stunning surprise. I had, regarding riparian water rights. How did they remove riparian water rights? Do you have any details on that?
Well, so what they did is, again, we just had riparian water rights. And all the legislators even said, we have perfect water rights right now. We agree we have perfect water rights. But changing it to the permit system was a legal path to be able to export the water and use the water without lawsuit, without fear of lawsuits if you drain the water tables.
Oh, here's the legislation.
I'm just totally unfamiliar with that.
So are you familiar with SB 82? This is what happened last year. So Senate Bill 82, water resources are any Missouri water source occurring on the surface of natural or artificial channels, lakes, reservoirs, or impoundments, and in subsurface aquifers which are available or which may be made available. In order to protect the access, use, and enjoyment of Missouri's water resources, it shall be unlawful for any person, pay attention to the word person, okay? Person to withdraw water from any water source for export outside the state of Missouri unless such person holds a water exportation permit issued by the department. A water exportation permit shall not be required to withdraw water from any water source for export outside of the state by a public water system. Public water is Missouri American Water. Because it services the public. Municipal water is government water. Public water is still privately owned. So this was part of what passed last year.
More, right? The end use.
Person, this is what I want you guys to pay attention to for what person means. Any individual, partnership, co-partnership, firm, company, public or private corporation, association, joint stock company, trust, estate, political subdivision, water district, or any agency, board, department, or bureau of the federal or state government, or any other legal entity which is recognized by law as the subject of rights and duties. You want to take this one?
Beneficial uses, there you see that are water uses which include but are not limited to domestic, agricultural, industrial, and other legitimate beneficial uses, that's what they will. And then they have right there, the end use is the final location for which the exported water will be used, consumed, or applied for a stated beneficial use. And then they'll go around that end use.
Yeah, is this not all related to, I don't want to get too far
No,
into
that's
this
okay.
because of my specialty. Is this not related to the exportation of water to outside of the state of Missouri?
This is, well, this it can
I think
be,
that's,
but the issue is
I think it
this.
was exclusively about that.
Actually, it's not.
No, okay.
No, because that was the thing, I kept begging Ben Brown to put something in the legislation that said, just prohibit it from being for profit.
Yeah.
Like, because right now, just say that it cannot be for profit to export Missouri's water, simple.
Yeah.
It's a tiny little amendment. They would not allow it. And so one night, we were having conversations with Ben Brown and explaining how dangerous and what we thought it was, because that's how it read. And he went to Missouri American Water and said, "Is this your bill?" And they said, "Yeah, that's my bill."
Well, that was actually on the floor.
Yeah, I do know that there's entities.
So he wasn't for.
There's like for instance,
There's a whole
there's
story
entities,
there.
private
He
entities
voted for it?
that are willing to build a
Well,
pipeline from the Missouri River to Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yep.
There are, and that would be an economical thing to do, and that's what my understanding of Senate Bill 82 was.
Well, the whole
prevent
argument
that.
was they wanted, as you read, like, we're going to prevent it. And everybody's going, well, nobody's doing it, right? No. Nobody has any problems, right? No. Everybody has as much water as they want, right? Yeah. It's cheap, right? Yeah. There's no problems. We just want to make sure there's no problems. But what they were doing was creating the very problem that happened in Michigan. This was the very system that they set up in Michigan that said that they were draining the Great Lakes, which I know is hard to fathom, but that's what the article said.
Yeah.
But look at all of our aquifers here in Missouri, and I think that's why we're main targeted for these data centers. Because underneath our bed of all of our, limestone and everything else, we have all these huge aquifers. It takes them forever to fill. But I'm like, that's one of the reasons we're being targeted, right? Because we have all this access and everything.
Well, Amazon of Montgomery County right now has plans for a 1,500-foot deep well system going in, not a closed loop or waterless like Google, but they're going in a 1,500-foot deep well. Most of the pivot heads are only a couple 100-foot down, so they'll be the first ones affected when it comes to drought.
I think that the most important question, like in Webster County, that's where the headwaters of 7 rivers to bear in Webster County, and they drilled this 1,500 foot well there as well. And what we saw happen was such rapid, it was so fast. Again, just if you're elected, will not put a moratorium in place until you can take a breath and figure out what a really good solution may be. and have the conversation, then they're not representing you. Thousands of communities all over the United States are putting moratoriums in place while they can just take a pause and figure out how best to protect their public. Yes, sir?
I'd like to say something, not being a devil's advocate here, but sometimes you look at the third-class counties like Gasconade and Crawford and Montgomery. I think a lot of times you're going to have a lot of pushback for this data centers from the political subdivisions, the schools. They'll want it. They're looking at dollar signs, the assessed value that will generate. No, everything is for money. I went through that.
You're right.
Everything's for money. Every county, they're looking for money. All are political subdivisions. And first of all, how will those ever be assessed? And that will probably be controlled by the State Tax Commission, which takes care of the assessment for Ameren UE.
And that is such, I mean, it's so convoluted, your point well taken.
Right. I mean, it's an unknown. How many millions of dollars are in one, and how could they be assessed?
Let me tell you this. This past week, the Missouri Association of Counties, the Missouri School Board Association, the Municipal League all had a private data center summit in Jefferson City, and clearly, without question, said the public is not permitted. But do you know who had a seat at the table? Google, Amazon, the big data developers had seats at the table. You know who didn't have a seat at the table? The public. And so one of my commissioners went and I said, what was it? Basically just Amazon's promises, Google's promises to throw millions into the community in order to basically bribe them.
Well, they just did it today.
Right. And so the issue is, to your point, that is what's hard to, but what's the price? What's the cost potentially associated? I think the data centers in 5 years, we also have what's called a reclamation bond as required as part of our ordinance. And that's because technology is moving so rapidly in 5 years. They may come in and build these massive structures that will be completely abandoned. And so the reclamation bond piece is a really important part. And that's where the reclamation bond, they have to bond for that. So if something were to happen, that they have to be accountable to that place. I think it just becomes a matter of principle. Like, it's machines over men. And when you come to realize the potential, they can do it the right way, but it's expensive. Okay? But it's $1 trillion a year industry, this whole data collection thing. It's the new oil. And so when you understand they have deep enough pockets to do it the right way, then why are we not requiring them to do that? Right? Yeah. So it's not saying you can't come here, it's saying you can come here, but you will be accountable to our resources, to the health of our people, to the drinkability of our water being potable and drinkable. You have to, if you're coming here, then you can't have a decibel level over a certain amount because of the vibration that is the link and the EMF piece. So I think that's the conversation we should be having. But for counties that don't have a moratorium or an ordinance, they come in and do it down and they do it dirty. And that's because nobody holds them accountable. So again, I'm not saying I'm 1,000% against data centers. I'm saying that there has to be an accountable, they have to be held accountable, and counties that are not willing to do a moratorium or an ordinance, they are giving them open season, they're waving the flag saying, come one, come all, plant your data center here. We don't care about the people who live in our community. So I think that there can be a conversation, but what we've experienced all across Missouri, they're shutting the people out. It's secretive. They don't let us have a seat at the table. And when that happens, the anger level becomes a fevered pitch, and people are just getting madder and madder. So I think that is really what the governor has actually ushered in, is this us versus them mentality when it comes to data centers, and you're going to get it whether you like it or not. And that's just making people very, very hostile towards them rather than have the conversations, you know. So, yes, sir.
One of the questions that I've heard answered both ways, and that is there a state statute that the political subdivision, aka the school district, ambulance district, fire district, that encompasses the said data center. They are the only political subdivisions that can benefit from the tax revenue, is what I've been told, that there's a state
I
statute.
honestly, I don't know the
You
answer
don't know,
to that,
okay.
and I haven't seen it.
Well, the assessed value on that data center gets divided amongst all the political subdivisions.
And I think the interesting part of that, to your point, how are they gonna be assessed?
Right.
Because
If
in
How is it?
theory, yeah, we're seeing abatements, tax incentives.
Yeah.
You know, when I saw in Montgomery County, whether I know it's true or not, they're getting tax abatements, right?
70%,
Yeah.
70% on personal property, they're
Yeah.
paying 100% real estate, they're getting 70% abatement there. And one of the carrots they dangled was they're gonna do $5 million per building. They're gonna give to the fund for the Port Authority, they'll get 80%. And then, the adjoining districts that touch will each get 5% is how they're doing it.
The port authorities, pay attention to what you just said, there's port authorities, it's ridiculous. And we've been watching them craft legislation for like the last 4 years, like, why do they keep talking about port authorities? Like, we've been so confused in areas that don't even have water. And so the port authorities, if you do a little bit of research.
Well, and even, so this is getting into the weeds some, but when you have political subdivisions, then port authorities are their own political subdivision. And so that means if there is a tax increase or something like that, they can vote it in on themselves.
Yeah. And that's what's interesting, like in the greater Kansas City area, when you do a tiny bit of research and you just like do a search, Port Authority data centers, they're the ones that are authorizing the incentives, the tax incentives, the carve-outs, and they're not an elected body. So it's usurping.
They
the-
created the economic development zone up in Montgomery County
That's
and
right.
brought these in. So the Port Authority is
Eco-Depot.
one responsible for bringing in the rates.
It's the Eco Depot, economic development, so whatever that entity looks like in your county, then they're working under the cover of darkness, NDAs and whatever they need to do. And this is a pattern that we're seeing, but with like port authorities and other entities to bring in economic development, so they can get a grant or they can get, but they're back ending with higher ed now because they're being called research campuses. So again, if there is anything, does anybody else have any other comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What would you put, this is back to Amendment 5.
Yeah.
So what would you say to the general pop, like maybe like a one tag line or whatever, to get them to understand that is, that you need to, not vote for that?
You say a yes vote. Again, you may have something, and I'm a little tired, so I'm not terribly clever. But a yes vote is a yes to raise your taxes. It's not
It's a
about
pig
getting
and a
rid of
poke is what it is.
I'm sorry?
It's a pig and a poke is what it is.
It's a redistribution. It's a Soviet redistribution of your taxes.
It really
Just
is.
say no to communism.
It's just, again,
Yeah, that's a good one there.
what I think is so offensive, and I'll leave you with this thought. I look at all these people in this room, and people are smart. People understand. But it's when you're lied to, they lie to you to get you to the polls to vote for something that isn't really ever gonna happen probably, and you don't even need to vote for that. That is just what makes me angry, that's why I'm here tonight. I hate being lied to. Just tell us the truth, it's called informed consent. You inform me, be honest, and then let me decide. I'm not telling any of you guys how to vote, but what we came here to do is give you the facts so you can make an informed decision. And you need to go now tell 2 people, you tell 2 people, you tell 2 people. Shield, Maidens of Missouri, you just can plug it in. We've been taking a little break because we're tired after session. We're in our 50s and we're tired. But we will start podcasting. We're traveling right now and we're speaking at different places like this. And so when I say Shield Maidens of Missouri, we podcast, 74 days into session, we had 90,000 downloads. So we definitely are widespread across the state of Missouri. We're super humbled by that because, like I said, we don't know how to do technology, so we just feel lucky that we can limp our way through it. But we have a huge audience, and we're so grateful. And there's so many of our friends that we're so grateful for. But again, don't trust us. Do your research. Hopefully, we've pointed you in the right direction. But for us, it's an absolute no-go on Amendment 5 because it's a lie.
Do you feel that your Sheila Maidens is reaching places like St. Louis?
We
Kansas
do.
City, Springfield.
She's the St. Louis I'm the country
Yeah.
cousin.
Is it
she's the
reaching
city
St.
cousin,
Louis?
she's
Yes,
St. Louis.
so we've got a lot of really vocal people that are pro, obviously, in St. Louis. And I will say that I was just asked just today about going into St. Louis for one group, and so we're doing that. And then another group as well is looking at a date. So there's two in St. Louis County.
And what about Springfield and Kansas City?
We're headed, we got a message today. So right now, just so you know, we have 6 weeks left till the election. We have 6 Senate candidates that we're really invested in. So where we're at is very committed to going into those districts and informing the public. So as much as we would love, we are going to do a webinar with Act for Missouri. So that is coming up right after 4th of July. So people will put that on Shield Maidens, so people who want to listen and have a conversation like tonight, and you want to invite people, we will do a webinar right after the 4th of July of any meeting, so people can be a part and see this and hear us talk about it. Act for Missouri is another incredible Missouri organization. They put out such good content. They are pretty phenomenal. What I would tell you for the rest of these organizations, here's your moment. If they're supporting Amendment 5, if they're supporting data centers willy-nilly, then you need to take a really hard look. Because what the Republican Party right now is trying to do is recreate and redefine what it means to be a Republican. So apparently, I'm not a Republican because I won't go along to get along. Right?
So that mean you'll vote Democrat?
No.
No!
Okay, that's what I was wondering. They're calling
But the
us.
point is, that's what they're calling me.
They're calling it.
We're
They're
taking
calling.
back our Republican Party. We're not gonna, just
Okay.
know this, the Republican Party platform is very specific. Do not touch the Hancock Amendment. It says that in our party platform. What they're doing with Amendment 5 is completely the opposite of what our
And they were
platform-
selling this, by the way. They were selling, you guys are going against the party platform. And I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure that's in the party platform. So and I'm like, they're going against the party platform. So then I mention it all and it just goes silent.
Yeah.
It's like, you're actually violating blah, 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 blah.
But the problem is, like I said, I mean, we're in our 50s, we're hormonal, we like a good fight sometimes. So, better with the state of Missouri, rhinos, with our husbands. So,